Greetings, scholars. I want to take a few minutes to talk to you about the last paper for the semester, the discipline paper. And for the discipline paper, it is just what it says. You're going to focus your paper on answering or responding to the war in Ukraine as your discipline. So think about this. What is your discipline? I'm talking about your major, whether it's communications, whether it's social work, whether it's criminal justice, whether it's urban and regional planning. What is your discipline? Okay, you have been here at the university. Most of you are probably sophomores and juniors, or may have a senior mixed in, but you've been here long enough to get a feel for what it is your major or your discipline requires of you. And so, what I want you to do with this paper is focus your discipline on addressing a worldwide issue, which is the war in Ukraine. So, if you look at the handout here, right, you have a definition at the beginning of the handout. A discipline is more than just a subject. It is both a subject and a systematic way of approaching that subject. Okay, so your subject is criminal justice. Okay, the approach that I want you to take for this assignment is how would a criminal justice major deal with the war in Ukraine? What would your discipline, what would your major, right? What would be the main concerns that your major would address in dealing with the war? Now, criminal justice, you're pretty easy, right? As a criminal justice major, if you were looking at the war in Ukraine, you would be looking at things such as war crimes. You would be looking at whether or not President Putin should be tried by the United Nations. You would be looking at things such as all of the theft that occurred in cities across Ukraine. You would be looking at whether or not soldiers should be prosecuted for war crimes, the sexual abuse, the violence against the citizens of Ukraine. So you would be very focused. It would be very easy for you to deal with this. Same thing for a communications major. Fake news, right? Can we believe the news coming out of Russia? How are you going to deal with the fact that you may be sent, whether you are a cameraman or a woman, a reporter, if you're going to be sent to Ukraine to cover the war, would you go? How safe would you feel, right? So you're going to look at your discipline. It's more than just a subject. It's more than just the books you are reading, the textbooks you're reading. It is about how you're going to approach your career as a social worker, as a criminal justice major. If you're going to be a lawyer, if you're going to be a television news personality, whether you are going to be a programmer, a director, cameraman, boom operator, it doesn't matter, right? We're not just talking about the subject, but how you're going to interact or how that subject plays out, right? In approaching a specific problem. And the problem that you're going to do is the war in Ukraine. So look at this. One way to remember the concerns that shape each discipline is to use the acronym SMILE. SMILE stands for structure. Structure simply means there's a disciplinary awareness, requires an awareness of structure of organization, just as you wouldn't write a lab report in one long paragraph. you wouldn't divide a history paper into sections on hypotheses or methods, right? The structure of academic writing is never arbitrary. The methods section of a lab report, for example, exists so scientists can replicate one another's experiments, okay? So this is unnecessary in an English paper because the thought experiment that led the author to their thesis is recreated as the reader works through the paper. Yada, 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 right? Basically, you'll have structure, and I will go over structure with you in a different video, okay? Methods. The easiest way to think about disciplinary methods is to ask yourself, how do members of this discipline answer questions about a topic, which is what you're going to focus on. Methods. How do members of a discipline answer questions about a topic? And your question, right, is how are you as a social work, criminal justice, communications, etc. major going to respond to the war in Ukraine? What specifically, right, would a criminal justice major be looking for that is different than a social work major, that is different than a communications major, okay? So methods, right? How do members of this discipline answer questions about a topic? You have your inquiry phase, right? Each discipline also shares a common set of questions those theories set out to answer, right? You have a theory, right? You want to answer the question. Your theory right now is, okay, I'm a social work major. There are kids who have been separated from their families. What am I going to do? There are children who have lost both parents. What am I going to do, right? Inquiry. Start asking yourself questions, right? This is my major, right? This is the scope of the paper that I'm writing, the war in Ukraine. How am I going to what? What questions, what theories am I going to come up with to help me deal with the issue? Language, for the most part, every discipline has its own specific vocabulary, right? So one of the things that you're going to do in this paper is use the language of social work. What are going to be those key terms that you use when you describe children separated from parents, urban regional planning, right? When you look at the mass destruction that went on in Ukraine, right? What terms are you going to use, right? That I don't know. What terms are you going to use? What's going to be your vocabulary when you discuss this issue? Okay. Evidence. The last question is evidence. Do your research. Do your research. One of the things that I really want you to do with this paper, talk to one of your professors. Talk to one of your professors in your major and just say, hey, my English teacher just gave me a paper and he wants me to examine the war in Ukraine from the perspective of a social work major. What do you think a social work major, right, would deal with in Ukraine? Talk about, ask, right, what would that person say you should do if you come across children who've lost both parents? What are you going to do about children who are hungry? What are you going to do about children who have no place to sleep, right? Start asking your professors. Look for evidence. Look for evidence, right? And the best way to do this is to start with your teachers. So this is basically your introduction to the discipline paper and what it is you're going to be doing. I will be answering your questions and giving you more instruction in future videos. As always, if you have any questions, please feel free to email me. I will be happy to answer your questions. Work on this assignment. This should be a pretty good assignment for you, and it should give you an indication of whether or not you chose the correct field. Have a great day, and I will see you in the next video.